Good evening, everyone, and it's great to see you all joining on Friday evening of this GSES Knowledge Sharing Session webinar. I'm sure that, like me, everyone would have planned to spend their weekend with their families. In fact, this pandemic has taught us the importance of keeping ourselves and our loved ones safe and spend time with them. As you know that, more than 1 million people have lost their life due to Corona. Doctors and scientists are working hard to find the vaccines. But today our question is that, do we actually know that how we keep our families safe, our colleagues safe during the normal period? And that's where this topic of our life and safety audit in modern infrastructure comes into the picture. And I would say that other than Mr. Garg, there's no best person to present this. So I welcome Mr. Nishant Garg to present this. Before that, I'll just talk about the profile of Mr. Nishant. Mr. Nishant is a postgraduate in nuclear engineering, and he joined the nuclear engineering at the age of 21. He has more than 22 years of experience. His credentials are registered with QCI and recognized as safety auditors with the business of Indian standards. He started working as scientific officer at BARC, Baba Atomic Research Center, and followed by some of the well-known MNCs like IBM and Siemens. In IBM, he has served as uh, head of the design, and Siemens, he was head of engineering for Center of Competency for Asia Pacific and Greater China. Later on, with his experience, he founded the consultancy firm, which is known as Efficiency, primarily for testing, auditing, and consulting services. And in a less than 5 years, the Efficiency has grown a leap and bound and now have more than 50 plus clients in India and subcontinents. As a team, they have taken more than 200 service assignments, which includes more than 100 audits in various geographies. So he has a very good experience of what is the best practices around the world. And he declared him and his team as a group of committed engineers who work for bringing smile to their clients. So I'm sure that we all look forward to him and hear what we have for our safety for our family and for us. Mr. Garg, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Singh sir. Thank you for a nice detailed description. It cannot be better than that. You have quite elaborated it out. Yeah, I have a small experience, and you rightly said that me and my team, we call ourselves as a team of practice engineers who is trying to bring a smile to our clients. We are trying to build a world which is being a safer world for our clients. So with that, I will take next 1 hour from you. And thank you all who has joined and who will be joining. So I will try to make this 1 hour being interesting and informative. So now today's topic is safety. Safety, I think it's being a well-known word with everybody. And I'm starting with the quotation made by Mr. Dillon. So Dr. Dillon has made a very strong statement that life is an art of living with uncertainty. So we all will live in a world which is full of uncertainties. And that's all. We have to bring a safe, conscious efforts to make our life being led without being having any fears. So with that, let's see some of our quotations before we get into it. Because today we'll be talking about safety, we'll be talking about audits, we will be talking about the safe practices and how a third party can help you out in bringing you a better, a safer world for you. So that's where some of the strong quotations, you can read it out, but the important which which I like to stress upon is the quotation which speaks that safety is not an intellectual exercise. It's actually is a conscious effort which is to be done It's a teamwork because it's for safety, it's a matter of life and death. So it's a sum of a contribution with a complete organization has to do. It requires a complete efforts which people has to work to make our work and practices bringing a world a safer world. We keep walking and we are finding safety slogans all across in our workplaces. Even the safety slogans are there nowadays on the roads. And thanks to COVID, we being bringing a lot of consciousness that what safety is important for us. So safety is not a slogan. It's just not a slogan. It's a way of life. It has to be embedded inside us that how to bring us into a safer world, how to live safe. So this is, we are now as a part of a COVID, we being living and we being seeing that a lot of changes has come up to our life. And that's where we have learned a lot of things. Mr. Gujral has initially said that yes, unfortunate that we have lost 1 million, close to 1 million lives in the world. This is what we have learned. We have learned some things we learned in a hard way, like for COVID. But yes, when we learned the things in a hard way, we have to embedded these learnings to our work, to our life, so that we can say gracefully that yes, for the future, I am ready. We are ready for the future. We are ready for this new threat, and we are ready for taking up in the new atmosphere. And that's what the challenging word is. Now I will first get into a presentation by starting one caution. Whenever I get into a flight, I normally being come across one caution, and that's where I raise everybody. I'm sure that everybody over this call must have traveled in the flights. Whenever we enter to a flight, do we ask a flight attendant that is my plane has got safety audited? Is when the flight will take off, will the if let's say the pressure goes down with some reasons, will the mask will come out automatically? And when this mask will come out, will they be delivering the air or the oxygen, which I will be needing that time the most? So that's very important. We don't ask. Why we don't ask? Because we trust. We trust that the airlines must have taken enough precautions and all these safety gadgets must be working well. Though we have some couple of incidents which has happened in the recent past, which has further given a lot of eye openers to the agencies like DGHFS, which is being into this to have a more stringent checkups before having every flights. But yes, this means that it not being that we become arrogant or we become innocent with not being getting into the safety parts. Safety is a part of life. Everything has to be seen from a prospective fresh eyes. For every flight we are taking off, all safety measures has to be checked in. So this picture, which we can see that if there is a bird flu scare, you cannot get away while hiding yourself from a bird flu. You have to take enough precautions to make sure that when you are having these kinds of any scare, you are better equipped and aware to have all precautions to fight with the kind of a threat you are exposed with. So this is what a lot about safety is. Safety is not to get away from the threat. Safety is to get a conscious and take enough precautions to have a better equipped to fight with a new kind of a threat which we are all exposed with. Now let's make a progress towards a safety audit while understanding something about safety. So I will take the next few slides to make you all understand a bit about the safety, and then we'll march towards that why somebody needs a third-party safety audit, which is our today's topic. Now what is safety? So we all know that safety word itself, we speak that it is a conscious and sincere efforts to bring enough precautions in our life to have a safe procedures and practices for safe working. So safety is all about a sensitivity in our acts. Safety is all about sensitivity in our operations. It's about understanding, thinking critically and understanding that what is being important to minimize the risk. So that's all about safety is that how and what better way we understand the threats which are coming and taking in potential actions which can minimize the impact if that threats has come to us. There are different types of safety which we normally come across. OSHA has identified 5 different types of safety hazards in our different workplaces. And these are the 5 safety hazards which we all come across every day in some way or the other. These are the 5 safety hazards, different types of safety hazards. One is a safety hazard because of the unsafe conditions. These unsafe conditions could be because of having working at different heights, working in the confined spaces, or because of forklift, because of wiring, switch gears, electricals, etc. These safety hazards, the first kind of a safety brings injury or even illness, or to the higher extent an accident leads to a death. The second kind of a safety is a biological hazard, which we all are being today's world being facing this biological hazard. This biological hazard, these are the safeties which could be happening because of having an exposed to the condition which is having in viruses, bacteria, or similar kinds of an injury or illness, which can lead to having unhealthy conditions for us. So these biological hazards can happen. Specifically, these are important to the facilities which are like hospitals, nursing homes, to our colleges, daycare centers, etc. These are very common, and because these biological hazards poses some kinds of known and unknown threats to us, like viruses or bacteria being exposed to atmosphere is an unknown threat, which is not being known to the atmosphere. The third kind of safety is a physical hazard. Physical hazards are the environmental factors. These environmental factors could be like working at a high temperatures conditions, or working in exposed sunlight conditions, or this could be like in a noise conditions. Like we recently have been auditing one place where people have got some kinds of stochastic effects because of being continuously working under the high noise atmosphere. So when you continuously work under a high noise atmosphere, you will start facing a lot of issues like irritation, and then loss of hearing problems, etc., even to mental issues. So these are the safety hazards which are due to the environmental factors which comes in. The fourth kind of safety is agronomics hazards. Agronomic hazards are normally very difficult to identify, but this could be because of using an unhealthy working practices, like leaning or lifting the equipment in a wrong way or material in a wrong way. So the agronomics hazards are not immediately identified, but by practice engineers in a detailed investigation can find out these agronomic hazards. We come across a lot of agronomic hazards when we audit the factories and guide them with having in detailed studies that what could be a prospective remedial measures. Now the last of the kind of an identified safety kind is a chemical safety hazard. Chemical safety hazards, they are even in the schools and colleges where the children's works in the chemical labs, they get exposed to these different chemical hazards. Otherwise, chemical factories gets into these chemical hazards, and they pose a lot of different hazards, not only immediate, which leads to conditions of having an polluted atmosphere, but also leads to a fire. We being designing to the some of the facilities which will be the workers are getting exposed to a lot of vapors and chemicals which release out the vapor which are injurious to health. So these chemical hazards are also very important to be looked into it. Now safety is more than inconvenience. Safety is very important. It's not just for a matter of convenience that what is possible, I take those measures, and what is not possible or not being known to us, we should avoid them. No, it is not like that. We have to look and account what all different kinds of possible threats has to be recognized and taken into account when we are creating a safety plan and when we are working towards a safe work atmosphere. Let's see some of an incidents which has happened in the past. These incidents, surprisingly, once we get into realize that these are small misouts which is being done, which are being ignored for a long time, leads to these disasters which has happened. Now, one of the important incident which has happened is a Takshila complex fire, which is a recent fire which has happened in Surat. This is a very unfortunate incident which has happened in a coaching institute. On the 2 floors of a coaching institute caught fire, and close to 20 students has died. I believe even the lot of channels has telecasted on TV that the students getting jumping out because of fear. But what is the reason? The reason we see that technically there was a one reason that it was a short circuit which leads to this fire. But when we get into a detailed analysis, it is not only the short circuit lead to a fire, it was also being an unawareness. Uh, we can tell you that if this incident could have happened to the place or to the geography or a country where the citizens or the employees are being more conscious, more trained, the impact could have been much, much lesser. So the way we see is that one, this accident has happened because there were no right escape routes. There was no right testing which is made which leads to this short circuit. But there was also being a hidden reason behind these many number of casualties. And the reason is that the students were not even trained on a basic aspects of safety. They were not aware that what are those 2 or 3 steps they have to do when they exposed to such kinds of threats like fire. So in an geography or in a country where the people or citizens are more conscious about the basic safety needs and what acts to be done, these casualties could have been definitely minimized. Let's see a second. This is a well-known accident, which is Upahar Cinema, which has happened in 1997 in Delhi. This is one of an incident which, because of lack of oxygen, asphyxiation close to 100 plus people who were seriously injured. And this accident, when the detailed investigation has been done, it has been found out that the transformer lead to the fire. So now this incident has been in news for long. Not only the prospect of having a compensation being awarded or being an imprisonment given to the owners, but this has also been an eye opener to the designers and to the governance bodies that what should they adopt in the codes and practices to minimize such incidents. Like the transformer, people have realized after this accident that the basic problem was the transformer was installed in the basement. There were 2 transformers and one of a transformer, which is oil transformers, has got fire and then leads to the spread out of fire and so many number of casualties. So such incidents, before that there was no such recognized incident. So such incidents give us a lot of opportunity, unfortunately, because being in developing country, a lot of practices comes in, safe practices comes in before we adopt our technology. So this has been an eye-opener for the governance bodies to draft guidelines that the transformers should not be placed in the basements and other precautions to be made. Now let's see a third one. The third one, this is a very famous fire again incident which has happened in a marriage home, and a huge number of casualties has happened. Close to 400 people have died, and this the reason of this again accident was a electricity, an electrical fault, which is a short circuit. Probably the detailed investigation has led that will not get into detail, but the high temperatures and the loose connections which have been realized as could be a probable reasons. But yes, this could have been also minimized. Again, one reason is that why this accident has happened. What could be an RCA root cause of this? Definitely electrical. And one way is that if we see from a prospect of an auditor or in practice engineers, that there could be the ways which could have been, if adopted, could have minimized the impact and casualties if could have been taken into practice. So what is important is not only to avoid such accident, but also to take up precautions so that if any such incident, if God's sake happens, we can minimize the impact of it. So in such incident which has happened here, there was no immediate measures has been planned to douse out the fire or to suppress the fire, and there was limited number of escape routes even being there, which leads to so many big number of casualties, close to 400, which has happened in this. Now, see some statistics. This is statistics which I have taken out from internet. This speaks that in year 2001 to 2014, close to around 3 lakh accidents has happened in the country, which is being reported. and more than 3 lakh people have lost their lives. It's very unfortunate that this has happened in India. So big number of people died, and so big casualties has happened. If we see this could have been minimized. This definitely could have been minimized. In next files, we'll see details of these statistics, that what could be the probable reasons and what could have been done to minimize this. Now, what we learned from all 3 or 4 incidents which we have seen, that safety is a need, that is established need. We cannot get avoid a safety, whether it's being in safety uh, because of physical hazards, the safety because of chemical, safety because of biological, or the new threat which are coming in a modern infrastructure in day-to-day life. Safety is something which has to be investigated, which has to be deliberated in a daily life on a recurring basis. So safety is a need, safety which cannot be compromised. These are some more statistics. And if you see on an average, there are 59 deaths per day. 69% of these are being happening because of fire caused by electricity. And trust me, we have audited more than 100 different facilities of different kind. And yes, we have realized that uh, the facilities which has caught fire and the incident has happened, 60 to 70% of incidents were there which could have been avoided, well avoided, if the right precautions has been taken on time, or if a right consciousness has been taken while designing the system or while installing the system. So these majority of these, at least 70% of these incidents could have been avoided. Now let's see, these are the some of the numbers which is being available on net. If you see the, so by in Delhi in year 2019 we are having close to 23,000 fire incidents. In this 23,000 fire incidents, the death or injuries were close to 2,300 deaths or injuries, which has happened. And the important part in this to note is that around 65-70% of these incidents were the mixed use buildings. So at least one thing which has been very well recognized by DFS while doing a detailed analysis of this, that the mixed use building is posing a very big threat. Uh, we should be asking that what should be a mixed uses building. Mixed uses buildings are very common in today's world, where we are having in commercials, and one example is commercial and residential buildings goes side by side. So residential buildings and commercial buildings both are having in different norms once you build up as per NBC or as per any international codes. But when you develop a mixed code building, normally being developers missed out a lot of these norms which set up, and there is always being exposed to a lot of incidents. So that's where is the statistics speaks of, that misuse buildings has seen close to 70% of these incidents. If we see some data from NRBC, NCRB, so if we see that this is close to in 2018, we are having an close to 13,000 cases fire incident which has happened, which is a slight, if you see at least close to around 12,000 people which is being died out of this. This means it's like in every one incident, fire incident leading to a 1% minimum getting died. If we convert this into a number of Indians dying every day, the numbers are very disturbing. This is 35 Indians dying in fire every day. And this is what is being registered. Trust, many incidents are not being also registered, which is being happening late or not being missed out to get registered. But this is still, the figures are very disturbing. Now this, out of this, if we see that close to 4,000 people are in the age of 18 to 30, and close to around 3,800 in the age of around 30 to 45. This means in the age bracket of 20 to 45, close to around 65% of our deaths has happened in fire because of between this age group, which is being a very alarming number. We will see that why actually this has happened and why these numbers are that much numbers are there for this. This is something to be noticed. Now, uh, when we see that national crime records were registered, these data, these are all authenticated data. But there are certain procedures, as I was mentioning, when you get this national crime records registering the data, there are some guidelines when they registered this. That's why there are a lot of incidents which also get unnoticed into this. But what all this means, what we being talking about, this means that there are fire safety laws, which is being, are these fire safety laws which we are being planning the building, are they are old fashioned? Or are we saying that the fire departments are not equipped to handle these modern infrastructure, maybe a mixed use building or high rise buildings, etc.? Or what are those actually reasons which we have to really look into it, that why these many fire incidents which are being happening has to be thought about it, and when they are happening, why there is so many number of casualties which are happening. So it seems like COVID which is being there, we keep talking about it as a safety community, saying that once there's one virus which is being there, it's important to fight and eradicate it, but it's also important to minimize the death rate. So say in case of any fire accident which is happening, it's very important to minimize this, or very important to see that how we can, if an incident, if it happens, that how we can reduce the number of the casualties which is happening. So this has to be investigated, whether there was a basic flaws which were there in the design itself, or because the designer has adopted what is being written in the codes, what is being written in the law books, and they are not being enough guideline which is there which can help to fight these kinds of incidents which is happening, or even if this happened, why the casualties has gone so high. So this require a special kinds of an attention to be given, and the data investigated clearly reveals lots of things which we'll see in the next few slides. Uh, One important this slide, if you see, that this is, speaks of that incident ratio study. It's a very famous study which speaks that for close to around 600 near miss, 600 near miss incidents which happens, this only leads to a one major injury converted to a one major injury accident. This means that when there is an accident which is being happening, this is being preceded by a huge number of an incident which were like near miss. And when these huge number of near miss incident being continuously being ignored, that only leads to a major serious accident. So this is very important, and that's where is we have noticed in the previous slide that we were having close to 13,000 incident which is being registered by the National Crime Records Bureau, and we realized that we were guessing that this definitely is an indicator that there could be at least 100 more times the small incident which could have happened or which could have been ignored, leading to these severe accidents which is happening. Now, this is definitely a substandard behavior. How to reduce it out, how to minimize these accidents? The smartest way which we see is that we will reduce the near miss. We should start recognizing the incident when it is as soon as it's happened. The moment we recognize the incident as soon as it's happening, we have to take immediate actions. We have to take action as our culture. We have to make action as a part of our working culture, so that these incident, if we reduce these number of incident, naturally we will be working towards reducing the major injuries or major accident which is happening. So we will be moving from a society which is being in a society which is been ignorant society to a conscious society. And being in conscious society, part of being conscious society is very important, that we recognize and register each and every substandard behavior and check out what could be a probable reasons and take immediate actions towards it. Now, what all we been talking with this? We've been talking that once let's try to make and cultivate us a culture which is a safety culture, because safety culture is very important. What is a safe culture? Safe culture is a collection of actually beliefs, perceptions, and values. It's a culture which is being developed by any organization which is having some kinds of beliefs, some kinds of perceptions. When these beliefs and perceptions are being drafted towards a safety being a part and practice of our working, then we create a safe culture. So studies have found out that workplace which is having disasters happening, these disasters are happening in those organizations where the policies and procedures which is being made for safe working actually has got failed. They couldn't have worked out in the favor of an organization to minimize the impacts which leads to an accidents. So this means those policies or those procedures which has being established has not worked in a proper fashion, which could have minimized the impact, or which could have not leads to those accident which has happened. So safe culture, this slide speaks about 10 different aspects of what we can do in a safe culture of an organization. But safe culture of an organization is naturally about it by the work practices, what we all do in an organization, which brings a cumulative safety. So when we talk about in safe culture, we talk about a safety ladder. So let's build up a safety culture ladder. So safety culture ladder, it's very important that any mature organization, when it talks about in safety, it works towards in safety culture. And then developing a safety culture is developing and working towards the safety culture ladder. And so what is a safety culture ladder is, if we see that this is one of a way of an assessment. So here by safe SCL is a methodology, or it's a method by which the safety awareness and consciousness of safe working, that means uh, how safe we being working in our behavior in a company is being measured and it being adopted. So we being moving from a culture which is being a reactive culture in a company or an organization towards a generative culture. This means we try to have a organization which is an organization which is being very generative, which we're trying to get into an atmosphere where our actions becomes reactive to cultivative to proactive and then to generative. This means that we take measures and we encourage our suppliers, our employees, our clients to work in a safe way, consciously, subconsciously even. So the safety becomes even in our subconscious. So that's an safe culture is. Uh, this slide, if you see, this speaks that this gentleman is being putting in post for safety week without taking any safety precautions by himself. So safety is not that just to put up on bills and post, or just to exchange few mails. As I said, safety is something which has to be a part of an organization. It should be a part of an subconscious and conscious behavior. It should be part of an every act which we do in organization, so that the organization works towards in safety. The organization should create an atmosphere where our suppliers, our clients are encouraged to work in a safe and fashion. So it's not that we just build the post and say that yes, we being a safety conscious company. So with this, we come to an once safe culture. Once we adopt a safe culture, it's very important to have a third eye view on a safe culture. Now, let's first understand that what are the safety audit means, what are different kinds of safety audit, and why a third eye view on a safety is very important to create a comprehensive and holistic view and of a safety culture. So, or a safety ladder. So let's see that what different kinds of a safety audits are. There are principally three different kinds of a safety audit. This first is a compliance audit, second is a program audit, and third is a management system audit. Compliance audit is quite simple. It's like somebody is being adopting and practice, let's say OSHA 18001, or we being practicing in EHS guidelines, let's say IS 14489, or if we, let's say, being in a school atmosphere, then we being trying to adopt an IS guidelines, and a charter of schools speak that we will be adopting IS 14435 guidelines into it, just like in compliance audit. where there is being a set of policies and rules which are established, and we being checking against those rules and against those policies. So whether our practices, working, our installations are being adhered and complied to those regulations or not. Whereas we see a program audit is it's being an encouraging an employee and checking out the employees whether those established policies or those established programs, how effective they are. So once we audit, check out that how our safety management system effective is, that creates a part of an audit program audit. And when we talk of a management system audit, it's include both of these, compliance audit and a program audit. So it's in combination, which is something which is being from management side to check out whether they are achieving that goal of being conforming to a company's objective and company's policies or not. So this is from a broader view, but we see that within an organization, the organization could be having three different kinds of audits. These could be a first party audit, second party audit, and third party audit. So first party audit is an internal audit. First party audit, it's normally it's an audit which is done by within the organization, by somebody within the organization. It could be an appointed management safety officer, it could be a safety committee member, or it could be any recognized safety auditor within the organization, which is being checking out the safe practices within the organization. And he's being checking it out whether the established practices and policies are being meeting the requirement as specified by the company or not. Whereas second party audits are being done by the clients to its suppliers. So it's also called as a supplier audit. So supplier audit, this audit is normally to check out that what the practices which is being adopted by the supplier, are they being aligned with achieving the adequate right results or not. So this is being initiated normally from the supplier side. And third party audit is something which a third party independent auditor comes and checks out on a fixed set of goals. So it checks out. So third party audit could be again of a different subclassified, but it's a neutral third party which gets appointed and comes and check. But it's not important to only see these numbers of that what is being in first party, second party, or third party audit. We should not be seeing. We should be seeing this audit, that all these three audits are important, and all these three audits having its own importance for any organization. And choosing of all these audit is actually being done to meet the right expectations. It not according to the consideration or any financial constraints, because even the third party audit is not a financially independent audit. It's again being normally funded by the clients itself. So third party auditor is not being something, if it's being done, it becomes then financially independent. So we have to see when we are being choosing first, second, third party, or let's say first and third party, normally we have to choosing that whether we being meeting a right set of expectations or not. Because for any organization, it's very important to have a combinations of a first party and third party audit. So normally we keep getting confused about the first party and third party, thinking that third party audits are financially independent audits, which is not. They are actually independent entities being doing audit, but under the finance normally being done by the clients itself. So this is, but the reports are neutral and it's having its own objective. We will see in the next slides. So why third party? First party audit, as I mentioned, that's having its own importance to check out and detailing about what are being the practices being there. But there could be some instances where you don't get a neutral output from a third party, from a first party. So third party audits is being done where you being appointing a third party or an independent agencies or auditors which to do a neutral assessment of your company system policies. So the accuracies are better. They gives you a pure view, neutral view about it, that what should be the outcomes are being known, that what could the objectives, the givens are being directives. They've been given in a direction that yes, these audits to be taken in a way to achieve a right result, whether it could be in compliance or whether it could be in surveillance or whether it could be anything. So defined objective. So it's a neutral assessment which gives you a better accuracy and to achieve a unbiased uh, results out of it. So the objectives are being set, and a company works not only towards minimizing or removing out the inaccuracies in the systems or the flaws in the system, but it also gives an opportunity for organization to work toward better self, to get into a new kinds of practices, because these auditors are being exposed to a various atmospheres. So they bring a lot of good engineering practices into place, which they inform to the client, which can even bring a lot of positivity and a lot of improvement in the atmosphere, working atmosphere in a different ways. So let's see are different, but these third-party audits are gaining importance in today's world, specifically are a need of a time. It's not only that this third-party audit is being said by the compliance or being sought by the top management, but it is also being a need of a time. Why the need of a time? Because we have seen that the today's infrastructure is getting are becoming challenging. Some of our examples I have quote, like we previously have seen in Delhi, 65% of a fire incident has happened in the mixed use building or in the high rise building. So let's see some of the example I have said, I have taken up here, which speaks of a complex infrastructure which demands for having a third-party audit, or which one should look into as a practice. One of them, which is most important of them, is a high-rise building. So high-rise building, if you see, we are recognizing a high-rise building from a different prospects by the different definitions. Like National Building Code describes any building which is high-rise building which is beyond 15 meters of height, whereas Traffic Advisory Committee defines it any building which is beyond 22 meters, and BMC describing 24 meter, which they want to revise this too soon to 32 meters. Uh, so this is depending on the height they classify it out. But from an engineering perspective, high-rise building is to be seen in a different way. High-rise building is, if you see, it's a building or an infrastructure where emergency evacuation is not practical to take out the occupants of a building safely out. It's where if any incident like fire is being happening, it's such an infrastructure where all these fight against fire, all these fight against these incidents has to be fought internally. So we see that a high-rise building becomes more important because you have to create such an infrastructure so that these fights can happen in the building internally itself. Uh, the key safety objectives are the life safety, property, and the property protections. These are the two, the primary objective of any safety objective for any kind of an infrastructure, the life safety and property safety. But what are the problems? There are 7 classical problems of a high-rise building. One is that the fire is spread in a 3-dimensional way. It is spread all across. The behavior of a people, the people behavior, the occupants behaviors are very different, especially in case of emergency. And a very important aspect, if we see details of it and what we have observed, that if the people or occupants are not trained, they behave in a very different way than the expected behavior in case of emergencies. Then violation of safety norms, delayed access to the fire, reaching to the fire, evacuations, limitation of firefighting equipments. These are some of the typical challenges which makes our high-rise building more and more vulnerable. So whether it is a commercial building or residential building or any other application of like warehouse it is being used, it is very important to see a high-rise building in a way that we are having a continuous improvement program, continuous third audit should be going on, so that we will be seeing that the risk management is being taken into account, and we will be bringing new practices vis-a-vis. We'll be checking out that existing practices also functioning in a proper way, because high-rise building poses own infrastructure issues. We see from a high-rise building some of the aspect which has to be seen from an audit perspective, which pose a challenge that high-rise building is having a structure which should be withstanding the fire. It should be having a right smoke system, alarm system. It should be having a high smoke management system. It should be having an adequate escapes of waste should be planned it out. It should be having an precautions should be made, like an pressurization of an escapes routes should be planned. So all those things has to be checked it out when somebody taking up an high-rise building audits. The second critical infrastructure in a modern world which has to be seen is in hospitals. Hospitals are very important for any country. It's important not only from a prospects of it saves lives, but it's very important to bring in confidence in the people. So if you are having a disaster and your hospital is not working, it creates a panic in the public that yes, we have an hospital infrastructure which is not being working and sufficing to me. So with this, if you see that NBC specifically has classified in 2016 hospitals as a separate group, vis-a-vis National Disaster Management Guidelines has come up specifically, which is being released in 2016 February, which speaks of that what should be seen for an hospital in terms of having in different guidelines. So hospital in today's world, when we do an audit of an hospital, it is not only important that hospital is being adopting and safe practices in an operations, but it is also important to see that if any disaster happening, how fast we can bring back all the services of hospitals immediately, so that the hospitals come to and working immediately after the disaster. So all those responses of a disaster has to be taken into account, whether it's being in fire or any other kind of a disaster. Hospital should bring back to a life immediately as early as possible. The third kind of infrastructure is an education safety, educational institutes. And educational institute safety is again being a priority. We have audited many colleges, and there are a lot of new challenges you see. The colleges which are girls colleges is having in different kinds of an issues. The colleges which are in remote parts or schools which are in remote parts are being having in different kinds of an threats and different kinds of safety aspects. So these institutes and colleges has to be seen from a prospect that we should be providing the students a safe working culture. They should feel safe, because if the school atmosphere is safe, then only the ward which the parent which are sending their ward will feel safe about it. So when we are talking of an safety aspects in school, all three aspects has to be looked into it. From the institutional security, from a design perspective, from a security perspective, from a climate perspective. So for climate like attitude also makes a lot of changes, and small measures of a safety measures also bring a lot of high impact on our safety programs. We have to prioritize such kind of strategy. We have to prioritize also that what is being needed and what is being important, what is being feasible, what is immediately being needed. Those all aspects has to be looked into it. Considering this importance, even UGC has come up in 2016 a specific chapter guidelines for having a safety guideline for campuses, safety guidelines of a higher education institutes. Same is a guideline we have for schools which are up to junior schools up to a class 5th standard. Safety guidelines has been released. Now see that though we in all the slides we have seen National Building Code, which is having its own importance, and we have seen at all places National Building Code has also defined a separate chapter for it. But it is important to also understand that National Building Code classified the different kinds of a building depending on the nature of uses. And National Building Code, which is being a document, a very comprehensive document, which speaks of it, which is speak that what are those right design practices which one has to incorporate in a design for developing a different kinds of building and establishments. National Building Code actually has got established in 1970 with its different revisions has come up. First revision has come up in 1983, then to 1997. Recent edition has come up in 2016. This means that it's a dynamic document. And in a couple of slides, we'll see that why this document has to be dynamic. So, but this document is dynamic, it's because it has already seen a 4 different versions of it, revisions of it. So it's a living document. So whatever we being learning, we being incorporating in this. So our regulatory authorities are being accounting the new challenges, and they being accounting and trying to bring this lively and incorporate into this. But we have to understand one part of it, that National Building Code uh, only gives minimum guidelines for the safety. It doesn't give you that this makes you 100% safer as building in a 100% safety any establishment. It gives you that if you adopt these practices in the building, it will make your building or your place a better and safer working place. So that it should be bringing a minimum standards into it, which brings a safer working environment with not having too much impact on the developers. So, but there has always been an encouragement made that if the new threats are being recognized and which is not being asked in the NBC, they should be adopted by the planners and designers rather than being only looking into NBC. Now, if we go into details of NBC, NBC Part 4 is specifically being dealing in Volume 1, Part 4 about a fire and life safety. So fire and life safety Part 4 is being defining out that what are the different potential hazards and what those designer has to account these kinds of protections which can minimize the impact on the building when such kinds of an incident has been taking place. So while adopting all these practices, all these standard codes and guidelines, we can minimize the risk. So risk can never be eliminated in this sense, but we can always work to minimize the risk. And if the risk has happened, we will be having enough measures, safety gear should be adopted in a building so that the impact and the casualties are minimal. So as I mentioned that NBC is a live document, it's a dynamic document. So a lot of incident which we have seen in past. So NBC developers has taken a relevance of that and updated their document. So like in Upar Cinema is one where prior to that, there used to be a practice of putting the transform the basement, which is being incorporated like for underground and many incidents which has happened, which we have seen in previous slides. So NBC has taken a learning of these incidents and incorporated into the next versions of it. So this way, as I was mentioning, that NBC is a live and dynamic document. It is not being setting an only comprehensive guideline, but it is setting up a minimum guidelines which should be adopted to minimize the risk. But if the new threats are also being recognized, so the designer and planners taking that concurrence and into a design or an operation phase to minimize the impact rather than only being working to comply with the NBC. So that's why when you are having any infrastructure which is getting set up, it's important to have a open third eye view depending on the applications. Like we have seen, there is a different safety requirement for an education institute. There are different safety requirement for a hospitals or for a high-rise building. So because the safety requirements are different, so it is very important that one should do a detailed analysis and view that what could be a possible threats and take a right measures to minimize those threats in those infrastructure rather than only looking for having in codes. So code should be a minimum thing which should be adopted. But beyond that, one should look for that what should be the right engineering practices depending on application should be adopted to have a better and safer environment. So now this slide is speak that NBC itself has recognized in 2016 a necessity of an audit. So NBC Part 4, this is an abstract of NBC Part 4, which clearly speaks that they are asking that for a building which are high-rise building beyond 15 meters, there should be an audit which should be done by a third party, ideally a third party independent auditor, and the frequency should be once in 2 years. It is something which is being mandated by NBC 2016 because after citing the importance of a third party audit, they being requesting the industry that to adopt this practice for the high-rise building because they they expose a lot of more threats to have these kinds of safety audit in the planning itself. So why safety assessment makes a sense? We have seen that there are a lot of advantages which the safety audit brings in. The advantages are not only prospects of having in financial advantages, but it's an advantages one gets from the business perspective because when you are having a third party independent audit, it brings you a lot of standard practices. It brings you a lot of unified practices. It brings a confidence on the employees, confidence to the clients, confidence to the community which the company is associated with. it brings a lot of brand management. And one thing which we have seen that normally company goes into an audit, and when they realize that out of facilities of 10 facilities, 4 or 5 facilities, they don't find out that too many flaws, they stop getting into an audit phase, and then where the slips out start happening. So safety culture, it is very important to keep practicing and working towards a safe environment rather than not being get exhausted once you realize that you are not having an incident which been taking place. So it's always been working towards safer and safer environment. So this is a safety audit. It's a step towards a total safety culture. So we being saying that safety audit are also being one of a very, very important step which one should look into it when we being working towards a total safe culture for our organization. So total safe, any kind of an establishment, any kind of an application we have, we should have a safety in our heart, safety in our mind. The safety should be there in all our acts. And that's where is a COVID is learning. It is teaching us that we should be wearing masks. We should be having an minimum 5 to 6 feet of a distance. We should be having a continuous sanitizing of our hands. So this is what we have learned. What we have learned. Same is the way that when we are developing a total safe culture for organization, we should be recognizing the different threats, which could be an exposed or a hidden threat, and we should be taking the right and advanced measures to minimize the consequences. So that's where is a total safe culture is. This is all about today. I just believe that we are a part of an efficiency. Mr. Gujral has given a lot brief about us, but we just to make little more that we are a part of an Quality Council of India registered company. I personally also being an recognized auditor by Bureau of Indian Standards. So we call ourselves as a committed engineers, and we are practicing engineers. We are into services which we call the testing, auditing, and consulting services. So audit is one of our very strong practice, and we have an experience on taking up an audit in different geographies, different countries, even outside India and subcontinent. We have done more than 100 plus audits, a part of our 200 plus assignments which we have done. And we have also been having a training and certification program, which is being designed and crafted as per the Quality Council of India set guidelines, which we take it up. We also do a customized training programs for our clients as per the need. And we have got a 50 plus client. These are the few of our clients, which is there, but the list is beyond this. So this is where. So for efficiency, it is a matter of trust. It is a matter of a confidence for client, and we work for bringing a smile to our customers. And thank you all for listening, and thank you all for having the time. Now we will take up a questions if in there. Thank you.
So we do have few questions. So if you can go through them and help them in giving the answers.
Okay. I'm taking few questions. I think we are. How much time we have, Mr. Gujarat?
So we have. It's already 6 o'clock, but it was very interesting that we lost the track of the time. We could have continued to hear you long, but in the interest of time, maybe we can pick up some of the questions and have them answered.
I think.
So I can read out. We have one question from Mr. Parveen Upadhyay from Hyderabad, and what they are asking is that do you see a conflict of interest when a certification body charge and issue the certification?
Can you repeat? Do you see a conflict of interest?
Yeah, do you see a conflict of interest when a certification body charge and issue the certification?
As I said that third-party audits, I mentioned in one of our slides that third-party audits are not a financially independent audits. So if we are being seeing that certification body being charging, but there are some ethics and there are some foundation of those ethics which one has to look into it when we are practicing a third-party audit. So charging is not that because these are third-party audits are not financially independent. They are being funded by clients. But having said that, there has to be have some ethics, and third-party auditor has been engaged to bring a neutral view, to an independent neutral view, so that the company comes to that compliances. So if the question is being saying that that the audit is not being done in a right way and practice, then it's a different aspect. But as an auditing company, as also being audited by Bureau of Indian Standard registered auditor and by Quality Council of India, we can only assure that we take into concurrence of all kinds of possible threats and gives a neutral view. That should be a third-party audit. But yes, third-party audits are not financially independent. They are being funded by client.
Okay, the next one is what certification can be done to become fire safety experts?
What certification to be done by becoming in fire safety experts?
Yes.
So in India, you have to have a qualification. By now, the government recognize you to have a right qualification in terms of becoming a fire auditor. Plus, you have to have an experience. Let's say if I go with the Quality Council of India, I'm not going with what the private body speaks of. The Quality Council of India asks that to have a right qualifications of a fire safety. It should be a minimum a graduate or a postgraduate in fire safety, with having an experience of 5 years plus and having done an audits in the past. Then there is qualifying criteria for that. One has to apply to get it accredited by Quality Council of India, whereas for a Bureau of Indian Standards, similar standards are being laid. Only the difference is that you have to go through a examination and a discussion with the Bureau of Indian Standard before being registered as an auditor with them. So then you can be qualified, can be called as a qualified auditor from an Indian prospects. Whereas from a private prospect, there are different courses which runs, while going through and passing those courses, one can proclaim themselves as auditors.
Okay. The next one is, what are the standards to create a refugee area in high-rise buildings, especially in residential buildings?
What are different standards to be referred with, yeah?
Yeah, what are the standards to create a refugee area in high-rise buildings, specifically residential one?
So now, first is that we have to understand that safety is India is a federal state. So being in federal state, that safety is a matter of a state. So it comes under the state jurisdiction. So NBC is one comprehensive document, but it's not sacrosanct and being adopted by all the states. So NBC though gives a minimum set of guidelines, but on top of that, the state guidelines also has to be referred when you are developing. Like in the presentation, I mentioned about a high rise being categorized by the different standards by different guidelines. Like when you talk about BMC, they are recognizing today as a high rise from a 24-meter high building, which they want to get it modified to a 32 meters because different high rises and large number of high rises are coming up in Maharashtra, especially in Mumbai region. So when you are developing an high rise, to answer it, that local regulations of a state has to be looked into it apart from an NBC. NBC 2016 is not adopted by all. NBC 2005 is still being adopted by all the states. So those who has adopted NBC 2016, those has to be looked into it. By now, all the government agencies, all the public sectors, etc., they are being bound to use NBC 2016, whereas state local bylaws has to be looked into it when you are developing in high rise.
Okay, and this comes to our last question for today. In case of difference in guidelines of NBC and state body that grants fire NOC, what takes precedence? Example, can local body relax height restriction for high-rise building limit from 15 meters?
Any local body, in case of a difference in guidelines of NBC and state body that grants fire. As I mentioned, that first is safety is a state matter in a federal state. So whatever the guidelines which state released for fire and safety has to be adopted and practiced. So there is no point of being talking of an NBC if it's not being adopted by the state. So whatever is because the fire being in state jurisdiction, the local fire officers give an NOC on the basis of what is being an adopted practices and guidelines for that specific state. So if any relaxation of or any on a height of a 15 meter, that comes under the part of an state. So there are different states which are giving relaxations. Those has to be taken it up. So yes, local body can give a relaxation in the limits of 15 meters height. So the local guidelines or state guidelines has to be referred once you are being looking for a fire NOC. It's definitely not being a central part, it's a state jurisdiction. So any state or any even the local body within the state also having an authority to look and relax or make more and more stringent the fire guidelines are. Like we have audited some of our factories and institutes in Karnataka, some in Tamil Nadu, and trust us that we have faced different standards and different guidelines being released by the states. So those has to be accepted and adopted.
Yeah.
Great. So that's all we have for the questions. Over to you, Giralda.
I would like to thank Mr. Garg. It was a very relevant, very interesting, and I would say a fantastic session. The way you shared all the knowledge, you shared all the incidents and how we can save this incident in future. And what are the importance of the safety audit? First of the safety and then the safety audits. I think we would love to have you, back again and hear you more about your experience and what more we can do to keep our families, our colleagues safe. I would take a first slide where there was a Nelson Mandela statement which says that the safety and security not just happen; they are a result of collective consensus and public investment. And I have a message that in GSES we have a very knowledgeable and experienced business resilience team who work towards sharing knowledge and creating capabilities to deal with various disasters. So for all the participants, if you like to know more about it, please get in touch with GSES office. And at the end, I'd like to thank all the participants and organizing team to organize this such a fantastic session, which is very, very important at this moment. And Mr. Garg, you have touched all our important subject like the high-rise building, the hospitals, and how we can make this safe. So thank you very much for your time. And thank you very much, everyone, for the sessions. Thanks.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to GSES.